band. We'll be discussing about these two frequency bands. We'll be discussing about IEEE 802.11 standards, different standards which were released in different years. We'll be discussing about the design basics, antennas, and antenna usage, and also the mobility, the roaming between your one access point to another access point. Right? Now, when you talk about your WLAN organizations, right, the first is IETF, right, which stands for Internet Engineering Task Force. This is an Internet Open Standard organization which has created this TCP/IP model which we used in our data communications, right? Next is your FCC, which stands for Federal Communication Commission. Right, this is the local regulatory body in the United States. Right, they have complete control over the RF spectrum, and they dictate what we can do with the RF technology. Right, now in every geographical location there is certain regulatory body. Now in Europe they have something called ETSI, right, which stands for Europe Telecommunications Standard Institute. In India also we have a regulatory body called TRAI, which stands for Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, right? So every country or every geographical location will have a regulatory body which have a complete control over the RF spectrum. Right? They will dictate what you can do and what you cannot do with the RF spectrum. And typically whatever FCC creates, it slowly gets adopted by different regulatory bodies as well. Now FCC has divided the RF spectrum in these two categories, right? One is your licensed RF spectrum and one is your unlicensed RF spectrum. Right, now in your licensed spectrum you typically find these entities such as your satellite communication devices, radio stations, military communication devices, and you have got telemetry, communication devices. So these entities will have the proper licenses in place from their regulatory body to operate their respective devices using the RF spectrum. Right? Now there is another category which is unlicensed RF spectrum, which we typically use it in our homes, and other is corporate networks. Right? We do not need to have the licenses in order to use the wireless technologies. Right? But these entities, such as satellite, radio communication devices, military communication devices, weather communication devices, right? Even weather communication devices, they operate their devices in very high power levels and high frequency bands, right? So they need to have the proper licenses in place from their regulatory body when they are functioning in their respective region, right? Now, under your unlicensed spectrum, your IEEE has created certain standards such as B, A, G, N, AC, and AX. Right? So, what are these standards? These are the standards created by your IEEE, which was released in different years. Right? So, IEEE 802.11b was released in 1997. Right? Which had speeds up to only 1 to 2 Mbps. Right? However, the latest standard IEEE 802.11ax, which was released in 2018, right, it has a speed up to 4 Gbps. Right? So IEEE, even over the years, has improved the modulation and demodulation technique in which we use our wireless service. Right? They have created these standards and they have released these standards in different years, with certain improvement in their own technology in which the wireless communication can be used, right? So we'll be discussing these standards as well in the further slides. Now next is your Wi-Fi Alliance organization, right? This is an organization which has created this WPA standards, WPA1, WPA2, and WPA3 standards, right? So these are the standards that you and me use in order to connect to any wireless access point, right? So IEEE has created a wireless service, but we need to have a standard in order to connect to a wireless access point, right? So did you ever notice that there is a limitation where your phone cannot connect to Aruba access point or a Cisco access point or your phone access point? Do you have a limitation like that? No, you don't have a limitation like that, because the Wi-Fi Alliance has created these standards, WPA 1, 2, and 3 standards, which provides us the interoperability between your client devices, right? Your client manufacturer devices, such as your Lenovo, Samsung, Apple, OnePlus. They are creating these devices which requires wireless service. And you've got other vendors such as Aruba, Cisco, Juniper, right? They are providing you a wireless service, right? They are providing you a Aruba access point, right? Or a Cisco access point or Juniper access point, right? Now, in order to provide the interoperability between any device to any device, wherein which I having a Samsung phone and you having a Apple phone, we must be able to connect to any access point into the world, right? So it can be Aruba, it can be Cisco, it can be Juniper, it can be anything. And how are we able to do that? Because the Wi-Fi Alliance has created these standards, WPA 1, 2, and 3, wherein which with these standards, it provides us the interoperability between your client manufacturing devices and your wireless service devices. Now, next is your RF bands and channels, right? So when you talk about your RF bands, the most famous frequency band is your 2.4 gigahertz ISM band. ISM stands for Industrial Scientific and Medical Band, right? This is the most widely used frequency band in the world, right? And it has a very good physical properties, where which this 2.4 gigahertz frequency band is used all over the globe, right? In every wireless service that we talk, 2.4 gigahertz is the first frequency band that was released, and it is used. It's quite famous in this wireless domain, right? Now, when you talk about your RF spectrum, right? So when you talk about your radio waves, right? This 2.4 gigahertz frequency band or 5 gigahertz frequency band, when they were being designed, first they were subjected with this problem called spread spectrum technology. What is the spread spectrum technology? This is where initially the initial wireless networks was being started to provide as a service. What was being noticed was that whenever you are creating any radio waves, right, for your wireless network, right, at a maximum you are able to create with this frequency band and this power level. Right? So this is the frequency range. This is the frequency range, and this is the power level. Right? Now, over the years, we experienced the wireless, the engineer or the scientist which was working on this technology. They experienced that we share a common airspace with many other devices, which cause interference to this wireless network, such as your microwaves, your video security cameras, your Bluetooth devices, your cordless phones, right? These devices are typically called non-802.11 devices, right? These devices tend to create an interference to a legitimate wireless traffic, right? To deal with that, they introduced something called spread spectrum technology, where any radio wave which was released, right, it was intentionally released with a higher power level and a higher frequency range, so that even if there is a interference from your microwave or a video security camera or any of the Bluetooth devices, there will be few of the data that will be transmitted over the airspace between source to destination, right? Now, because of that, right, so your channel, right? The way in which your radio waves or travels in your 2.4 gigahertz or 5 gigahertz frequency band, it goes, right? It ranges from 20 megahertz, right? You see this? These are the different channels. Channel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And each channel has a spread of 20 megahertz wide, right? Because of this spread spectrum technology. Why? Because why we created this spectrum technology? Because of the existence of other non 802.11 devices such as your microwaves, video security cameras, Bluetooth devices, cordless phones. They were eating away your legitimate wireless radio waves. Right? To deal with that, we are intentionally, right, the wireless radio waves are spread across 20 megahertz wide at this power level. Right? And because of that, it ranges at 20 megahertz wide. And in your 2.4 gigahertz frequency band, you've got these 14 channels. These are very important because in different regions, the number of supported channels will differ, right? Now, in United States, right, the only channels that are supported in 2.4 gigahertz frequency band are channel 1 to 11, right? 1 to 11. Channel 12, 13, 14 are not provided for because 12, 13, 14 are reserved for your military communications in the United States. However, in Japan, all 14 channels are provided for your home users or for your corporate users, right? So every country, every region have their own different channels, right? Now you can see this. You've got channels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And channel 1 and 6 are a bit highlighted more in black. Why? Because you can see that they are not overlapping with each other. Channel 1, channel 6 and channel 11, they are not overlapping with each other. Channel 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Sorry, channel 2, 3, 4, 5, they are overlapping with channel 1. Right? Is there a problem with that? If it overlaps? Yes, there is a very big problem if it overlaps. Right? What is this effect is called co-channel interference. What do you mean by co-channel interference? Let me try to explain you with another example. Right? Now let us assume I've got my name is Shoaib and I've got a friend named Rahul. Right? He was not feeling well and I went to him. Now he stays very close to an airport. Right? I went to visit him. He was not feeling well. He welcomed me in his house and we are sitting on his terrace. We are having snacks. We are having tea. And I'm just discussing what happened to you and all that. Right? We're just discussing, having a normal conversation. Now during that, as his house is very close to an airport, right, an aeroplane is coming and landing on the airport. During that time, while we both are communicating, I'm asking, how are you, Rahul? What happened? Why are you not feeling well? He's saying, I'm not feeling well because of all the weather. So we are just having a normal conversation. And during that time, an aeroplane came and it landed in the airport. Do you think we will be able to communicate because of the disturbance in the airspace? No. Because whatever he says, I will not be able to understand nor hear. Nor what I am saying, he will be able to understand nor hear. Because of a very large interference in the airspace by the aeroplane. Very similar to that, this is called co-channel interference. Right? Whenever your access points, right, when they are operating on this channel 2, 3, 4, 5, where they overlap with each other and they are present in the same airspace, they fall in this co-channel interference. What are the effects of the co-channel interference? Right? Very, very bad signals. Right? Client disconnects. Very bad speeds. Right? So whenever you talk about 2.4 gigahertz frequency band, we do not use channels that overlap with each other when you are working in the airspace. Right? So because of that, how many channels are you left with to work with? You've got only left with 3 channels, which is channel 1, channel 6 and channel 11. Right? Because they do not overlap with each other. right? Next is your 5 gigahertz UNII band, right? Now UNII stands for unlicensed national information infrastructure bands, right? Now, when you talk about your 5 gigahertz frequency band, you have 300 megahertz wide channel. I mean, you have got, when you talk about 2.4, you have got only 3 channels that you can work with, right? In your production network, no, wherever that you are setting up multiple access points into the air space. But when you talk about your 5 gigahertz frequency band, you've got many channels, right? Because you've got these 4 frequency bands called UNII1, also called as one UNII. You've got UNII2, also called as middle UNII. You've got UNII3, also called as upper UNII. Right, you've got this high gigahertz wide channel, right, which is further divided into multiple frequency band called UNII1, UNII2, and UNII3. Right? Now, when you talk about your UNII1, you can see that it's spread across from 5.15 gigahertz to 5.25 gigahertz, right? And IEEE has dictated that the maximum power level that must be used by this frequency band is users or the corporate users, we do not need to have the licenses, but we need to have something called DFS, right? And when you talk about DFS, this is a bit headache. It becomes a headache for us to manage, our access points in this frequency band. That is why we altogether avoid this frequency band, right? We do not use this in our home networks or the corporate networks. Now, next is your channel bonding. Now, in your legacy, in your wired technologies, you might have come across these terminologies called ether channel or a LAN, right? Where you logically combine 2 physical interfaces together to provide you high availability, redundancy, and a high throughput, right? Right? You might have heard about this ether channel or a LAN in your wired technologies, right, where you logically combine 2 physical interfaces, or 2 or 3 or 4, whatever that is, to provide you high availability, redundancy, and high throughput in your wired networks. Similar to that, in your wireless technology, we have something called channel bonding, where here, however, we are not combining these 2 channels together to provide you 1 channel. We are not doing that. We are grouping 220 megahertz wide channel to provide us 140 megahertz wide channel, right? Again, the reason for that is to for high throughput, high bandwidth and all of that. For that we do channel bonding. However, the concept of channel bonding does not make any sense in your 2.4 GHz frequency band. Because when you talk about your 2.4 GHz frequency band, what are the usual channels that you have? You may have,
Hello?
You may be in India. Right? So that is why the concept of channel bonding does not make any sense in your 2.4 GHz frequency band, because you've got already a shortage of channels. But when you talk about your 5 GHz frequency band, yes, the concept of channel bonding makes more sense here, because you've got a lot number of channels and different frequency bands, UNII 1, 2, 3, right? So because of that, you've got at least 25 channels, right? In your 5 GHz frequency band, you've got 25 channels. And yes, in that, the concept of channel bonding makes more sense, right? Something like this. So you've got the UNII 1, 2, 2E, 3. They've got these different channels, 36 to 144, right? So this is a typical example where we are grouping two 20 megahertz wide channel to provide us one 40 megahertz wide channel. Right? We have doing the same thing here. We are grouping two 20 megahertz wide channel to get us one 40 megahertz wide channel. We can also combine two 40 megahertz wide channel together to also provide us 180 megahertz wide channel. Yes, we can do that as well, right? Yes, we can also do 280 megahertz wide channel. You can do that as well, but you need to check if that access point supports that, or do you really need to do that in your production network. Simply, if it can do it, if it doesn't make sense to do it also, right? You need to see your production network requirement. Based on that, you need to go for it. Now you can see this UNII. Yes, so this is a typical example. This slide just showed you. You've got a 5 GHz frequency band. You've got a lot more channels, wherein which the concept of channel bonding makes more sense here. But what is this? What do you see this? You see this orange highlight of channels in your UNII2 and UNII2EX2, right? And what is it written? It is written as DFS channels, right? What do you mean by orange? Orange means that you need to be alert, right? That is orange. The color orange signifies the color of beware, be on alert, right? Something like that. Because what is trying to give you an alert of that, because we typically do not use these channels. In our home networks or in our corporate networks, we do not use these channels, right? Because these channels are shared. We share these channels with other licensed entities, such as your weather communication devices, your radar communication devices, your satellite communication devices, your military communication devices, right? These entities have the proper licenses in place from their regulatory body. Right? So FCC, this is a regulatory body, United States. ETSI, right? It is a regulatory body in Europe. Right? TRAI, Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, that is a regulatory body in India. Now this frequency band is, between UNII2 and UNII2E extended. This is a special frequency band which is also shared by these entities. Weather communication devices, radar communication devices, satellite communication devices, military communication devices, and they have the proper licenses in place from their regulatory bodies. And because of that, as these are very sensitive entities, military is a very sensitive entity, their devices are very sensitive, right? We don't know, and we do not even need to know what they do, right? Whether radar communication devices, we don't know what they do, and we don't even need to know what they do. However, if we are using this frequency band, our regulatory body, FCC, TRAI, ETSI, whatever that is, no matter where we are sitting in this world, they have said to us that you need to enable something called DFS. Right? We'll understand what is DFS in the coming slides, but for brief understanding, it is a technique where we do not disturb these devices. Right? We, using DFS, do not disturb other devices. Now, in order to do that, we are causing an issue to our own network. Right? DFS causes an issue to our own network. We'll understand how it does that. Why to get into that headache? That is why in our home networks, also in our corporate networks, we avoid these frequency band altogether. Right? That is why it is highlighted in orange. Okay. So can you answer the first question, please? Which channels are considered non-overlapping and will not cause RF interference when co-located? Okay. A. This is from your 2.4 GHz frequency band. Any other answers?
40, 48.
40 and 48. Yes, this is from your 5 GHz frequency band. Okay, can you answer this question, please? Channel bonding is a best practice technology for combining bandwidth of which channel? 5. 5. Okay, it's 5 GHz frequency. Next is your 802.11 standards and MX.
Hello.
Now, what is this IEEE 802.11 standards